I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer for RealTime Fantasy Sports.
And I'm Logan Glaser, contributing writer for RealTime Fantasy Sports.
Welcome to another edition of the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. On today's show, Logan and I are going to discuss all the NFL player movement and what it means for the upcoming fantasy season. Logan, you ready to do this?
Absolutely.
There's a ton of movement. I can't remember an offseason as crazy as this with so many top-name players getting moved to different teams, so this should be a lot of fun. Also should be, a lot of work for fantasy owners this offseason, trying to figure out the fantasy values of these guys as they move to new teams. So let's jump right into it. Desean Watson, we can forget about all the off-the-field stuff. We're not worried about that when it comes to fantasy purposes, so we're going to look at his fantasy value. Just stick with that. So Desean Watson heads to the Browns. What do you think about that move for him?
Yeah, for Watson, I think this is an average move for him. I think he's got a lot of good pieces with the Browns to work with. He's got Amari Cooper that's coming in. He's got Kareem Hunt. He's got Nick Chubb, a great offensive line. In 2020, before he was suspended for a year, he was the highest completion percentage in the NFL at 70.2, and I think that's going to be a huge asset for the Browns, upgrading from Baker Mayfield. And I'm not in love with the move for Watson, but I don't hate the move. I think it's a good average move for him. I'm
kind of the same way. I know that doesn't make for great video, but I feel the same way about Watson. I think it's fine. It doesn't move the needle a lot for me. I think he's more of a low end number one fantasy quarterback in this move. He's going to get 400 plus rushing yards, 30 plus touchdowns, 4,000 passing yards. So he's going to be a good weekly starter. I don't think he's going to be in that top Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen category, but just right outside of that. So I think it's a good move. Like you said, good offensive line, good running game, I think takes some of the pressure off him. So again, low-end number one fantasy quarterback for me for Desean Watson. Another guy moving to Cleveland, Amari Cooper. He got traded there. What do you think about his fantasy value at that move?
Yeah, I like the value for Amari Cooper moving. Obviously, he's the clear number one now, compared to competing with CeeDee Lamb for targets. I think a lot's going to depend on Jarvis Landry about where he signs. There's a lot of talk with him re-signing with the Browns. I think that would actually help Amari Cooper getting in a solid number two, just so he's not double teamed constantly, and there's another option for Watson to throw to.
Yeah, Amari Cooper, the one thing I look at DeAndre Hopkins. He had 150 plus targets 5 straight seasons when Desean Watson was starting. So Amari Cooper is going to be that number one guy. He could pile up the targets in that offense, be a good number one for fantasy teams, in my opinion. Again, you kind of got to see what else they do. You might add somebody in the draft. Still some players they could sign like Landry. But for me, I like this move for Cooper. I think it really helps his fantasy value, especially with Watson as his starting quarterback. Okay, another big move. This just happened. Tyreek Hill got traded to the Dolphins. Huge surprise for me, and I think everybody else out there. What do you think this does for his fantasy value?
Yeah, this was definitely the shock of the offseason, I personally think, so far. I think for everyone's value, everyone took a hit with this. Tyreek Hill took a hit. Waddle took a hit. Mahomes took a hit with him leaving the Chiefs. But I think the one player that kind of boosted was Tua. I think for Tyreek Hill, he's going to be kind of splitting receptions with Waddle, and it's going to be a little different for him. They're both going to be looking to get the ball into space and use their speed on the outside.
Yeah, I think it does. I think it kind of does what you said, kind of hurts everybody but Tua. I think Hill might drop out of my top 10 at this point. I think he'll still get his touches just because I trust Mike McDaniel. Great offensive mind, their new head coach in Miami, so I think that's a positive for those guys. Even with Tua's limitations, I don't like him because he doesn't throw the ball well down the field. I don't think that's great for Hill, but I think they're going to find ways to get him in space, get him a lot of touches. McDaniel, look at what he did with Deebo Samuel last year. He got a ton of work all over the field, so you could see something similar with Hill getting that amount of touches, but still, I think it hurts his value. Like you said, it helps Tua, though. I think he could, not really a number one fantasy quarterback in my eyes, but man, I love his weapons. I think they're going to do a lot to make him successful in Miami. Just outside of that number one group, maybe a high-end number two good spot starter. Also in Miami, a couple running backs signed. Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, they both signed. What do you think happens with those guys there?
Yeah, the clear loser in the signing with those is Myles Gaskin, and also I believe rookie running backs, because I thought they were going to draft a running back with this upcoming pick, but obviously signing those two running backs, you're not looking at that anymore. I think it's about a standstill for Edmonds and Mostert going forward for me personally in fantasy. I think they're going to be splitting a lot of carries. I think the clear winner is James Conner out of everyone in this deal, with Edmonds getting out of Arizona.
Yeah.
But
Very true. Edmonds just continues to drive fantasy owners a little crazy with moving to situations where I think they are not the best for his fantasy value. I think he could be a stud back. Unfortunately, he's going to split work again, likely with Mostert. But Mostert is injury prone, so you have to worry about that a little bit. I think Edmonds is going to get a lot of work. Tua will dump off some passes as well. So I still like Edmonds better than Mostert out of the two. But like you said, I don't think it's great for either of the fantasy values being in a situation where they're likely going to split work. Another quarterback move, Mitchell Trubisky tries to take over for Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh. They could draft a quarterback still in the draft, kind of for the future for that team. But for now, it looks like Trubisky's the starter. What do you think he can do there?
Yeah, I think this is a good move for Trubisky and the Steelers. They signed him on a 2-year, $14 million contract, which is almost backup numbers. That we're looking at $7 million a year for Trubisky to actually be a starter. There are talks about Pittsburgh signing or drafting a quarterback in round 1. For Trubisky, though, he's going to be the clear starter for day 1 or week 1 for the Steelers. Obviously, his value is a lot more than being a backup on the Buffalo, but you're looking at probably QB 25 for Trubisky is my guess about where he's going to go. It's a great offense. You got Najee Harris as well. You can do dump-offs to him. He's a pass catcher, but there's not a whole lot of value with Trubisky, I think.
Yeah, I think he's in that 20-ish range as well. He moves to an offense he's never had to work with, like in Chicago. He has a lot more weapons to work with in Pittsburgh with Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool and Pat Freiermuth as well. So I like the move for him personally. I think he'll have some big games along the way, and I think we can't forget that he can run the ball too. He had a season with 400-plus rushing yards, so the guy can move a little bit. I think they'll find ways to use those legs. I think he'll be a good spot play every once in a while in the right matchup, but I don't think he's going to be that plug-and-play fantasy option just yet in Pittsburgh. Like we said, too, they're probably going to draft somebody as well. So Trubisky's probably, just a short-term option for them right now, unless he lights a world on fire, which I guess is possible, but I don't quite see it. Another quarterback I want to talk about, Logan, Matt Ryan. He heads to the Colts, got traded there. What do you think about him for this coming season and that move to Indianapolis? Yeah,
it's obviously a much better situation for Matt Ryan compared to Atlanta right now, who has no wide receivers, and they're looking to probably draft one. He's got Michael Pittman he's going to, and also probably one of the best running backs in the game with Jonathan Taylor. Everyone's going to be focused on Jonathan Taylor in the game, and it's going to free up Matt Ryan to go ahead and throw the ball around.
Yeah, I think this is a good spot for Matt Ryan. Might not throw the ball as much as he did with Atlanta. He had a lot of pass attempts several seasons in a row for them, so I don't think he's going to get quite the chances. I think it's an upgrade over Carson Wentz for Indy and for Michael Pittman, who you just mentioned. He had a breakout season last year. I think he could do better this year with Ryan as his QB. He likes to focus on his number one receivers, kind of like what he did with Calvin Ridley. So I think it's a good move for Ryan, but I think he's kind of in that Trubisky range, maybe a little bit better than him. He doesn't use his legs as much, but I'd like his chances to throw the ball for a few more yards, maybe get a few more touchdowns than Trubisky. So have him more in that 18, 19 range for Matt Ryan right now for this coming season. All right, Los Angeles Rams, they like to make splashes in free agency and with trades. They made another one, signed Allen Robinson to a huge contract. I'll go first on this one. I think he can rebound in a better situation, obviously, than he was in Chicago. He was not himself last year. Allen Robinson did not have a great season. I think he's still more of a low-end number 2 or number 3 fantasy receiver. I don't think he's going to be that elite option with Cooper Kupp there, getting a lot of those targets. They could still sign Odell Beckham as well. You're looking at Allen Robinson, kind of what Robert Woods did, in that late 20-ish range when it comes to fantasy value, in my opinion, when it comes to the receiver spot. What do you think about Allen Robinson?
Yeah, it's an obvious boost for Robinson. I don't think it's the perfect situation with him being the number 2 behind Kupp, but it's an obvious boost from Chicago. And last year was kind of like an outlier season for Robinson. He didn't get nearly as much targets, and there was a lot of QB play with Justin Fields going around and switching between Andy Dalton, and I think he's going to get more stability with Matthew Stafford this year.
So with that move of Robinson, the Rams ended up trading Robert Woods to Tennessee. He gets dealt there to become their number 2. They let go of Julio Jones. They have A.J. Brown, Robert Woods as their top 2 receivers. What do you think about Woods in Tennessee.
Yeah, I think this was a must move for Tennessee to go ahead and get a number 2 wide receiver. They tried with Julio last year. He just couldn't really stay healthy. A.J. Brown was also suffering with some injuries last year. Robert Woods also suffered an injury last year, but he should be fully healthy with the season come. I think this is a good spot for him. I think Ryan Tannehill is going to be able to get him the ball in this offense.
So I'm a little bit worried about this move for Woods' fantasy value. He has 1,000-yard seasons, 2 of 4, but he moves from a pass-first offense to more of a run-first offense. Titans, they attempted 535 passes last year compared to 607 for the Rams. So I think Woods is going to drop down more that number 3 fantasy territory when it comes to receivers. So more of a number 3 fantasy receiver in my opinion. And I had to look this up because it feels like it's been forever, but the last time Tennessee had 2 1,000-yard receivers on their roster, can you take a guess what year that might be?
Oh, I can't even. How long has it been?
2004. That was the last time. So it's been a long time since Tennessee had
very long time.
2 1,000-yard receivers. A.J. Brown's there. So I don't know. I'm kind of worried about this move for Woods' fantasy value a little bit just because of the situation. Could get a few less targets as well. All right. Another huge move. Russell Wilson dealt to Denver. So he goes from Seattle to Denver. What do you think about this?
Yeah, obviously this is a top quarterback on the move, just like this entire offseason has been surprises. And I think Broncos were really looking for a quarterback, and they got the person that they were wanting between him and Aaron Rodgers. Russell Wilson's going to bring speed with the quarterback position to Broncos, and he's got a couple of weapons in there. It's nothing like DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett, but he's still got Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and I don't think his value is going to be as important as it was in Seattle, but I think he's still going to be a solid QB2 in leagues.
Yeah, I like this move for Russell Wilson. I think people overlook this a little bit with Seattle. They actually, when you look at pass attempts, they don't pass the ball a whole lot compared to other teams in the NFL. So I think Russell Wilson's going to get more chances to throw the ball in Denver. Like you said, maybe a little bit of a downgrade, but still some really good receivers to work with. Tim Patrick, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy. I think it's a good situation for him. I think he can be a top 10 guy once again. He's going to run the ball too. He's always capable of running for 500-plus rushing yards. So I think it's a great situation for him. Get out of Seattle, maybe get a chance to be more of the centerpiece of the offense and kind of carry that team offensively a little more. I know he carried Seattle offensively, but I don't think he kind of had, the reins taken off him there personally. I think he could be in a little better situation in Denver. All right, another huge trade. I just keep saying this over and over, but Davante Adams, he got traded to the Raiders. What do you think about this move?
Yeah, this was also another huge surprise, especially after the Aaron Rodgers contract. I think this definitely hurts his value compared to being the clear-cut number 1 in Green Bay. He's going to an offense that has got Derek Carr throwing to him, who's not the best QB compared to the reigning MVP. You've also got Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs, Hunter Renfrow. You've got lots of different weapons coming to you in Las Vegas, but it's still at Davante Adams. I mean, I still am going to draft him as a wide receiver 1 in leagues. He's not probably going to be my top wide receiver, but you're looking at probably this 5 to 6 range is probably where I'm going to be drafting him for wide receivers, and we'll see how it goes in Las Vegas.
I agree. Same thing with me. I think I have him in that 5 to 6 range. I think he's still going to get a lot of targets. I think we overlooked that Las Vegas does throw the ball a lot. Carr attempted 626 passes last year, and he averages 557 pass attempts for his career. So it's not like he's moving to a situation where he's not going to get the ball a lot. I still think he's going to get a ton of work. I think it hurts Waller and Renfrow more so than anything, because I think both those guys are going to get a few less touches this year. I love it for Carr, though. He was 12th in fantasy quarterback scoring last year. That was without Davante Adams. Can he be top 10 this year?
He definitely can. He's got the weapons to do it.
Yeah, I think he could, too. I know a lot of people, kind of are down on Carr at times, but, man, for fantasy purposes, I think he could be very good. So on the flip side, Aaron Rodgers, what happens with him? He has no Davante Adams. Valdez-Scantling just left as well. They have Alan Lazard that they assigned a second-round tender to, so he's going to stay there in Green Bay. What's going on with Rodgers?
Yeah, I thought definitely a free agent was going to sign with Green Bay after the Devontae Adams trade, but it looks like they're going to be going the rookie route and going to be looking to draft a rookie in round 1. I think that's going to play a huge factor with Rodgers. Right now, he doesn't really have any options to really throw to, but a lot's going to depend on this draft and see if they can pick up a free agent like Landry that's still out there.
Yeah, that rookie class is fabulous at the receiver spot this year too, so that's good news for him. Hopefully they actually use a draft pick for a receiver instead of taking Jordan Love in the first round. We'll see what happens there. So I would expect them to heavily address the receiver spot in the draft. But it could be more of a run situation for them this year with A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones. Those guys are 2 really good running backs. So maybe they go a little more run heavy than they have in the past. That's one thing to keep an eye on, depending on what happens the rest of the offseason. A couple more quarterbacks we want to get to before we get out of here. I know we've touched on a lot, Logan, but 2 more. Let's talk about Carson Wentz first. He gets traded to Washington. They get a solid starter for the first time in a few seasons. What do you think about Carson Wentz heading to D.C.?
Yeah, we've kind of got 2 different sides of Wentz with Indianapolis. He went on a couple of streaky runs, but then he also had some terrible games. They lost to Jacksonville in a must-win game to make the playoffs, and now he's going to be a new situation. He's got Terry McLaurin. Which Terry McLaurin, his value has to go up because he had Tyler Heineke be throwing to him, and now he's going to get it's not a huge upgrade, but it's a small upgrade with Wentz. It doesn't really make much sense for Washington, in my opinion, with the contract that Wentz comes with, over $30 million a year. But I think for all the receivers with Washington, it's an upgrade compared to Tyler Heineke last year.
Yeah, I agree with you. It definitely is an upgrade for the receivers. It's an upgrade for the team as well because Wentz is going to be better than Heineke, in my opinion, even though Wentz is erratic. He posts some good numbers. He's a former MVP, so the talent's there. Hopefully he can get his head on a little straighter than he has the last few seasons and get things going for them. But I do think it's an upgrade for the team overall. I think he's another guy, could be worth some spot starts. He had some big games with Indianapolis last year, and they didn't exactly have quite the weapons at receiver that Washington has with Terry McLaurin and the passing game, Logan Thomas as well, and Antonio Gibson's really good too. So I like it for Wentz and the Washington team overall, but I'm not exactly thrilled with him from a fantasy perspective. Last one I want to talk about, not exactly the most exciting one, but I think it's one fantasy team should pay attention to. Marcus Mariota, he signs with the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of questions with Atlanta with the draft. Are they going to come out and take a wide receiver, or are they going to go a quarterback with their first pick? They've got pick 1.8 in the draft, 8th overall, and there's a lot of mock drafts that have them taking a wide receiver with that first 8th pick or a QB. If they take a QB, obviously Mariota is going to be very limited with his options in his first year there. They're looking at between maybe Malik Willis, you got Kenny Pickett at number 8, and they might just go that route and Mariota be kind of a gap year with them.
Yeah, I don't know if there's really any QB in the draft that's ready to come in and start from week 1. So I think either way, Mariota probably starts to open the season at least. And if he plays well, they'll probably keep him in a starting role. I think it makes sense, especially since the QB class isn't that highly thought of this year. So I think Mariota is going to start. And again, he's another guy that can run. He has 300-plus rushing yards 3 seasons. He's always been kind of erratic when it comes to throwing the ball, but he has some potential for the big game because of his rushing ability. Also, Kyle Pitts, I think this is good for him. I know no one else is there right now, but Mariota loved Delaney Walker when he was starting in Tennessee, and so I think that's good news for Pitts. He's going to get a lot of looks from Mariota. He's not exactly a guy that throws the ball down the field a ton, so the tight end gets a lot of looks over the middle on out routes as well. So good news for Pitts. Hopefully they find somebody to help him, take some of that load off him.
Absolutely.
They have nobody right now.
They got Russell Gage gone, Calvin Ridley, and
all right, Logan, we attacked this. We had a lot of guys that we had to get through, and we got through them all. Hopefully it helps fantasy owners as they start preparing for their drafts. You can start drafting right now here at RealTime Fantasy Sports as well. We have that great contest we're doing right now where you make your picks before the draft. What's it called again?
Yeah, it's called the Best Ball Scout. We have over 200 leagues going to fill up. $5,000 is awarded to first place. We're about 63% sold out right now, so it's going to be selling out a little bit before the NFL draft, so make sure you get in a draft today.
Yeah, it's a fun idea, kind of puts you in the chair of the GM trying to figure out where these guys go, and so I highly suggest if you want to get in a little differently, get in the Best Ball Scout Championship and put all these off-season moves to use in your lineups going forward. All right, Logan, thanks for joining me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Jeff.
All right, this has been Jeff Paur for RealTime Fantasy Sports. Have a great day.